Impact Teams Radio. Welcome to Impact Teams Radio, the show where we explore what it takes to be a leader of the leaders in corporate America. Get ready to be inspired and discover proven tips for going from average to exceptional. Now, here's your host and guide, Tony Sherman.
Hello, and this is Tony Sherman from Impact Teams Radio. Welcome to this week's episode. And this week we have a return guest, Shelley Smith. Hello, Shelley. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Tony. It's so nice to be back again.
Thank you so much. Last time we got so wrapped up in talking about predictive indexes and some of the stories that you were sharing with us that we never even touched some of the core topics that I'd invited you on, like employee engagement. So if you're okay, I wouldn't mind spending some time doing a deep dive on this episode on those.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
And for those who don't know Shelley's story, go onto the show notes here and we'll have a link to the previous episode and you can listen and catch up on where we are. So let me start right away. Why is employee engagement important? And more importantly, why is it really critical at this juncture? Why is it important now?
We know it's interesting as every few years or sometimes even more frequently, we go through these new buzzwords. And probably the last one that comes to mind to me is empowerment. There was all the rage, empowerment, get your employees empowered. What does that mean? And we've moved off of that, although that still exists. But employee engagement is in almost every article that you read, in every leadership book and magazine and, Harvard Business Review. It's all about the employee engagement. And what does that mean? It means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but at the end of the day, it is the energy that a person brings into the team and the leader's ability to embrace everything about that, and that they're able to lift the game in the environment that they're in. Why is it more prevalent today? It's really interesting when you go back to the Carnegie days and the Frick days and the first movements on unions and in the steel industry. The conditions that people lived in drove them to the path of the unions and much more. The things that employees talk about today and the expectations, yes, it comes from the differences in the generation, but it still does come back to, even back again to Carnegie and Frick in the steel days, it still comes back to the employee engagement, employees wanting to feel valued. And in today's economy, the way people job hop, it used to be you would stay at a company your entire life, or if you changed once. Now, the trend is 2 to 5 years at the most, and you're seeing high potentials jump and go to what they perceive to be a better job, a better opportunity. So the employee engagement and the value in which I personally feel as a team member is heightened tremendously. Does that make sense?
It does. So as this is a specialty of yours, I presume in your executive coaching, this is something that you work with your executives with. Is that correct?
Yes.
So can you give us a concrete example in your work and in your working with clients where you've brought this to their attention, they've done it, and it's had a high value return?
Yeah, absolutely. A good example would be an HR representative that I've been working with for a while at a fairly large company that's been around for several years. She's been there a few years herself, and she's got some long-term associates. We've been working on succession planning and talent development throughout the company. But what's interesting is she's got an associate in benefits that over the last couple of years has very much become disengaged. She used to be one of the all-stars, and she's just simply not anymore. You can tell that she's just showing up for her paycheck and following orders, if you will. And we don't want people to just follow orders. We want to, come in and give and live on a daily basis. To make a long story short, we went through and looked at some last performance reviews and interactions, and we went back and looked at expectations, what had changed in the environment, and it came full circle. I did some business coaching with this individual, and I got into her head a little bit to understand what the dynamics were going on. We used the predictive index piece to go through and help with the motivational needs. And what I did was I took and did a group analytics for the department head and the individual, and we lined up communications and styles. What had happened is over the years, the culture of the company had not changed, but the players had changed. And it just created a very different environment. And things that used to happen just simply didn't happen anymore, and the associate became very dysfunctional. So over
a very few sessions, honestly, we turned it around. The associate is now in charge of a couple of specialty programs, wellness. They have a large focus on corporate wellness now, which of course I love. And this associate is now in charge of that. She's come up with some really creative ways that they can use the flex spending accounts within the company itself. And because she's been brought back to the table, and hopefully the listeners know what I mean by back to the table, as not just a participant, but a real player, she is completely back into the game and engaging those around her, because we were able to go back, step back, reflect what's going on, and pivot with how she was being managed versus being motivated. And she's a completely different person, really intelligent, sharp person, definitely a high potential. And she had just been left in the dust, if you will, with a lot of the changes that had happened. And when we came back to her motivational needs and her strengths, gave her projects to work on, gave her room to grow, it's just a completely different associate again. And now she's not just an employee, she's truly a colleague and associate within that department.
So, Shelley, what you've done there is you've given a very good example of the value of employee engagement. But I would imagine that, well, it seems to me employee engagement can be quite difficult. So do you have a process for this? Do you have something that you can walk people through? I mean, you have an ebook on this. What's in the ebook on the employee engagement?
Well, the ebook itself, we began to talk on. What I did was, I love Google Hangouts, and I encourage people to use it. You can use it in various ways, but what I did was I pulled together for that particular ebook some local ladies that I respect in different realms, a recruiter, a couple of HR specialists, and a strategic marketing company. And we had a discussion around employee engagement and what it meant, what they had seen in the market, in companies, and some tools and different things that could be utilized in order to lift the game of the engagement, regardless of how many people you were talking about, again, in your size of your company. Employee engagement is not just big business. It's every level, and I definitely wanted to stress that. But yes, there's a process. And by all means, please feel free to download the employee engagement ebook. You can get it on Amazon, but you can also get it straight off on my website. And I also have it posted on LinkedIn, and you can see the dialogue that we had, the five of us, do this Google Hangout conversation. But the process is, I say it's simple, but usually people don't bring the pieces of the puzzle together. In a nutshell, it's starting with what is the vision, what is the mission, and completely understanding that, going into what are the core competencies that match and complement the vision and the mission. Then from there, what are the behaviors that you need? From there, taking that into the dynamics of the culture that you've created, and then hiring and or fit gaps for your existing team, moving into the onboarding, moving into the talent development. And notice I didn't say management. It's talent development across all levels. From there, rewards and recognition. From there, you're doing the goal setting and the objectives and the KPIs and all the different project managements. And again, these are small companies can do this. You've got 10 or less employees, or you've got 18,000 employees. You can still use the same process of this. And then employee development and the career ascension that is made and the career enhancements that are made and overall leadership and development. And all of this is the holistic approach to employee engagement itself. And when you do it all together, that's when the full cycle happens. And I'm sitting here spinning my finger into a circle, because that's what it is. It's not one thing. It's a multitude of things, and it's not one person driving it. It's a multitude of people being passionate about it and driving it. Does that help?
It does. So what I'm hearing is that when you're looking at employee engagement, it's not just for our listeners something that you can get involved in. It's almost like you have to have a cultural approach in the company, because it's not just one person's job at that point.
Correct. It's interesting, and another change, the Human Resource Department has historically been the one that's supposed to drive all of the things that I just mentioned, but the reality is the really successful companies, and again, the ones that John Cullen talks about from good to great, those leaders, those number five leaders, are the ones that can step away and everything keeps going Why? Because they got everybody involved in the process. He didn't use the word employee engagement, I don't think, back in that book, and now I'm going to go back and look. That's exactly what he was talking about. A number 5 leader has a fully engaged staff at all levels. So yes, it's a multitude of people. One of my favorite books is written by Liz Wiseman. It's called The Multipliers. That's exactly what, to me, employee engagement is you've got people at all levels multiplying the talents and the strengths of everybody around them.
I like that. So, again, I'm conscious of the time, and we have plenty of time. I don't want you to feel rushed. But you mentioned about your book. So I just want to point out to our listeners, we'll put in the show notes a link to Shelley's website, and I would urge you to go and get the free ebook from Shelley's website, because there you can subscribe to her email list. Now, most of us don't like subscribing to email lists, and I totally agree with you. But Shelley has a book coming out, and I'm going to subscribe to her email list so I find out when it comes out. So, Shelley, we've talked about the one ebook. I know the very first sentence that you had, and I'm just grabbing my notes, way back in the episode that we did a couple of weeks ago, talking about Premier Report, and you said, we're all about the connection. And that's actually the title of your new book coming out, isn't it?
It is. My tagline says, "Have you connected today?" And I'm on a mission in life for people to see, look, and listen all the connection abilities, opportunities that we have around us every single day. All ages experience this, and we just don't realize it. So the book is called The Connection, appropriately so, and it's a playbook for business owners and executives. Again, it doesn't matter the size of your company. And it's a playbook of how to learn your connections count and the ones that you haven't even connected to yet. So, yes.
So let me just unpack 2 phrases that you've used there. The first one, you said a connection, because I love the idea of being a strong networker. And every now and again, I try to network. I try, and I'm talking about water cooler stuff in my company, meeting people, meeting my team. But then I get tired and I get busy. I get focused. So what do you mean by connection? And then after that, my next question, just to give you a heads up, is going to be, and why do you call it a playbook? Because that interests me. But let's start with connection. What do you mean by connection?
Well, if I could, I think probably by now you and the listeners know that I read a lot and interpret a lot. And one of my favorite quotes is this, and it's actually by Brené Brown. She's a professor and an American scholar. But she says, "I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive substance and strength from the relationship." Those aren't my words, those are her words. That certainly is what connection means to me. It's when you really connect with somebody, you stop, you look, you listen, you pay attention, you're attentive, you're respectful, and you're able to give them something back, and you're giving them something back naturally, authentically, because you want to. So to me, the connection isn't networking. It's absolutely a part of that. It's a part of the connection activity, but it doesn't create the wave of connectivity. The connection is being able to help, not self, but help others connect to a resource, whether it's a new app, whether it's something like Google Hangouts. Again, I love Google Hangouts. Whether it's connecting them to, a tool that they can use. Whether it's, oh, wow, you need to meet so-and-so that works for so-and-so. You guys have a huge strategic business alliance opportunity. So whatever it is, maybe it's something, a project that's going on in the community. We all have connecting opportunities every day if we choose to partake in them.
Okay, so actually I totally misinterpreted. Please you clarify. The connection is far more than just a different style of networking, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And actually, the reason why I call it a playbook, just to skip ahead a little bit, is that it's interactive. So it's not a typical textbook that you would have at your college or university. I do have open each chapter with a quote and with a definition of a word to sort of put your head in the game of what I'm going to talk about. But through the entire book, there's lots of open white space for you to take notes, stop, react, and say, what are you thinking now? What did you just learn? What have you done? And it's a fill in the blank. So to not be as a diary, as you will, but it's not a trade book and it's not a college textbook. It's somewhere in between, and it's meant for you to use over and over, time and time again. And you can stop and start wherever you want. The table of contents includes chapters on return on investment. How are you spending your hourly time, and what are your true billable hours? There's a section on, of course, the networking piece, going through networking and researching your competitors and understanding yourself. There's an entire section, of course, dedicated on employee engagement, and another one on succession planning. There's another one on delegation and accountability. I do include a list of some of my favorite books to date, and just some ways when I say, have you connected today, I give you 2 or 3 pages of questions you could ask yourself to see if you're fully connected. Does that better explain the holistic approach that I've attempted to take in this book?
Oh, yes. And in fact, I like it because it actually shows that what we've talked about in the previous episode and touched on in this episode is you almost like pull together all those years and years of experience and wrap them up in a playbook.
Yes, that's the intent. As funny as it may sound, I want to be known as you're that connecting lady, because I want for people to get something out of the book and to understand. I even go through the 60-second introduction, or whatever you call it, the pitch, the intro, the B&I spot, and making sure that when you have your introduction that you are spot on and you're memorable. So yeah, it's meant to be interactive. If you can be interactive with a trade book, that's the intent.
So is this something that, in terms of a philosophy, when you're coaching executives, when you're coaching people in corporations, and specifically we were speaking about employee engagement, but is this something that you coach them on? Is there connectivity?
Yes. I may not use that language, but yeah, absolutely. Last week I had the pleasure of working with an asset management department within a real estate team as well as a project management team. And again, company's been around for years, hugely successful, but it was, they work within silos. And so I ran 2 staff meetings for them and was the observer and would stop and interject and ask them for clarity and for purpose. And why do you need this? Why did you say that? Why did you make that face? What are you ultimately trying to do? What is the process flow? And all of those things are about the connection. It's just we don't use it within that term. And knock on wood, it was a huge success. They hadn't met in 8 months, but yet they worked together every day. And it was a whole new approach for them, but it was definitely about the connection.
Awesome. So there sounds like there's a lot there, and we've really skimmed. You've almost given us a table of contents. When is this book due out?
It should be out the very first week of July. I've got early orders that people are contacting me directly with now that I'll just ship them the book as soon as it arrives. But I would venture to say by July the 7th, you should be able to order that online and/or just shoot me a message on my website or my email, and I can send you a copy.
Excellent. Okay, that's brilliant news. So, Shelley, again, we've just run out of time. So I've got to thank you for coming on the show a second time.
I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you so much on the employee engagement understanding. I was really intrigued with that. And the fact there's a free ebook and the ability to sign up and get a heads up when the connection comes out, that's something I'll definitely be doing after this interview. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
And I just encourage our listeners to go and get Shelley's book on employee engagement and look for The Connection, which is coming out in early July. So until next week, this is your host, Tony Sherman. Have a good week. Bye for now.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. Now go and apply these few gems. Make the wisdom you have heard your own. If you want to be part of our launch success, then please go to impactteamsradio.com/love and tell the world. If you want more and never want to miss a beat, please go to impactteamsradio.com/subscribe. If you have 3 minutes, we would love to see a positive review on iTunes. And until next time, remember to act on what you've learned, and you'll be ahead of most of the world. Impact Teams Radio.